Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to the BlackUSA.News morning show. My name's Donnie Glover, publisher of BlackUSA.News and also BeMoreNews.com. Starting back in August of 2002, we came up with a 5-point agenda, which includes Black business, public education, ex-offender services, universal access to healthcare, and affordable housing. Item number 3 is of particular importance because the Black community is too often starring when it comes to America's prisons. Did you know that America is 5% of the world's population? At the same time, we have 25% of the world's inmates. 34% of them at last check were Black men, and Black women are the fastest growing demographic. Therefore, for the past 20 years, it has been a top priority to us, especially living here in Sandtown, Winchester, where we see the recidivism rate expounded upon all the time. We see people get locked up, they come home, locked up, come home. It's a repetitive cycle. To discuss this all-important issue, we have a woman who's been an advocate, not only here in the city of Baltimore, but statewide, including in Annapolis, the state capital. She has been fighting for quite some time, representing the Jobs Opportunity Task Force to make it clear, not just to everyday citizens, but to those policymakers, that we need more attention on ex-offenders, and let me get the term right, formerly incarcerated individuals. And welcome, Caryn York. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Glover. I am well. Thank you for having me.
How did I do? How was your introduction?
It was beautiful. You know, I'm the only pushback I'm going to say is returning citizen or individual with a criminal background.
Okay.
All great otherwise.
How long? So what is your background?
Okay.
How did you get to here?
So born and raised in Baltimore, city forever, proud graduate of Baltimore City College High School.
I'm sorry, where'd you go? The Baltimore City College?
The great Baltimore City College High School.
I thought you were saying Baltimore Polytechnic.
No, I did not. I did not.
Okay.
Great school, wonderful school, but city's better. So born and raised in Baltimore City, my educational background is in international studies. I've always had an interest in policy, always had an interest in politics, but it was more so focused on the international stage. After college, I realized that I didn't really need to go far. I didn't need to go to another country to solve issues. I could do it right here at home. So I started off working in state government. I was working for this Baltimore City delegation in Annapolis, specifically under Delegate Kurt Anderson. And a lot of the work that he was doing back then, sitting on the House Judiciary Committee, was around sentencing reform, expungement, all of these different efforts with individuals like then Delegate Jill Carter and other folks. So that's when I, really started to get an idea of what some of the Maryland laws were that were impacting this particular community. After working for the state, I moved to JOTF, Job Opportunities Task Force, and was focused on workforce, right? How do we get low wage workers into high wage jobs, knowing that many times individuals just get a job and they get stuck. There's no opportunity for mobility or advancement. But then it was almost like a light bulb went off in some of these meetings that I was having to attend, where folks, were trying to figure out, particularly in Baltimore City, that there's this segment of the working population that it's very difficult to help them get jobs. And this was a large segment of the working population in Baltimore City. And this population were individuals with criminal records. And usually those conversations were really only held in like the criminal justice spaces, right? Where folks are like, they're coming home, how do we get them set up with jobs, housing, and the like? But in the workforce space, it was like, we're talking about it, but we're not really that, intent on the larger solutions to address this. And so I just kind of went in because I was reminded of the fact that I had family members that, are still struggling to this day with their interactions with the criminal justice system. And I remembered, in college, me getting locked up, right, for getting caught smoking weed with friends. And I had enough of a network of support where I didn't have to worry about that record, impacting my ability to get employment. But there were so many others who they didn't have that privilege. They didn't have that luxury. And so I felt like it was my obligation to make sure that we recognize a criminal record and criminal justice system involvement as a workforce issue. This is an issue that directly impacts economic opportunities, economic justice, all of the above. So I, originally started focusing on things like we need to expand criminal record expungement. In Maryland, we have this thing called Maryland Judiciary Case Search. It's an online database where you can access anyone's criminal record all the way back to the 70s. Many states don't have this. You have to have some type of special authorization or something to access someone's personal criminal history. In Maryland, all you needed was internet access. So the record was not just being used in courts, it was being used by employers, landlords, education, all of that.
And let me guess, Black people caught the negative end of that.
Overwhelmingly, right? We are all clear about the intersection between race, criminality, and employment in this country. And so if you know that over 90% of employers are using criminal background checks and hiring, and we know the numbers in terms of who's in our jails and prisons and who's coming home, there's no way that you can ignore the fact that this is going to have a more pronounced impact on Black workers. And let's be clear, we're not just talking about guilty convictions here, okay? Because many times folks think that, it's only the folks that served, real time and were found guilty of serious felony convictions. No. We're talking about individuals that weren't even found guilty. Anybody. That's unable to get employment. Non-convictions, misdemeanors. So for Black folks, it's almost like it didn't matter what the final disposition, what the outcome was. Anytime a hit came up on case search or in a background check, that was game over for you. The employer is not looking at whether or not it was a guilty, whether or not it was null pros, or whether, what exactly it was. You got a record. And so therefore, you're somebody, we're going to move on to the next. And so this is why when you look at unemployment rates in the city, and especially the communities where the crime rates are highest, you start to see how swaths of Black folks are unemployed. And many times they're unemployed as a result of some interaction with the criminal justice system and that record preventing them from moving forward.
Can I just ask you, how is life for white people with when it comes to their involvement with the criminal justice system? And I'm just, we're just painting a picture. Is there some disparity? Do white people go through this?
So, there's disparity from beginning to end, right? Racial disparity in our system, right? Even starting with something like pretrial, where you find, and this is not just anecdotal, right? This is like statistical data shows that, white defendants are going to be more likely to be released on their own recognizance, or, given a lower cash bail, or, some other less onerous condition in pretrial. White folks are going to, find in sentencing, they're going to get, lower sentences, not as many years. And many times when it comes to the reentry portion, the reason why you don't see the impact so pronounced in white communities is, one, we already know that white folks aren't getting locked up at the same rate as Black folks are. Right. So they're not even, you don't see swaths of white communities that, have criminal records. Right. So that's the first piece. But the second piece,
though they outnumber us. It's kind of like watching Fox News. Everything wrong with Baltimore is Black people's fault, whether it's the criminal, whether it's the elected official, whether it's the Black administrator. Everything wrong with Baltimore is Black people's fault.
Correct. Instead of recognizing these intentional policies and practices that were put in place to make it difficult for Black folks to even survive, right? We're not even at thriving yet. We're just talking about survival.
If you ever get a chance to go on Fox, would you please articulate that to Mary Bubala and Kai Jackson, because they paint a picture of Baltimore that's just unreal.
Yeah. Well, Donnie, to that point, and, to you, this is why it's so important for us to have mediums like this. It's so important for us to invest in support in Black media that's going to be able to tell the whole story so that we're controlling, our narratives and perceptions, because all of this also feeds into policymaking too. So, when we have to go to Annapolis, because even though this issue is most pronounced in Baltimore City, we can't go to City Hall to address many of these issues. We have to go to Annapolis. So the folks who are getting to make decisions in terms of what's happening or what should happen in Baltimore City are usually white folks from other jurisdictions that have the worst perceptions of Black folks in Baltimore City. So they're not really interested in supporting many of these initiatives. And also, to your other point about the difference between white and Black folks in the response to this, white folks unfortunately have these things called networks of support. Okay, they have a mommy or a daddy or uncle or aunt or somebody that has some business or something that's asset heavy, that it doesn't matter what their interaction was with the system, they're going to be able to provide them an opportunity. They're going to be able to provide them an opportunity to get their foot in the door somewhere. So that record, it may impact them a little in terms of if they want to go and obtain some special credentialing or, move up. But in terms of just getting their foot in the door, it's so much easier because their network of support is so much larger and so much more well-resourced. While for us, you look at our communities, mommy's struggling, daddy's struggling. If they are, even in a space where they're still able to contribute, you can't necessarily rely on aunt and uncle. They might still be in this. Our whole families and communities are struggling, so that, you may have generations that have interacted with the system and are still trying to figure out how they can, be economically secure.
I have a confession to make. That was Michael Randolph, by the way, down in Florida. He used to live here in St. Town. I have a confession. The reason that I asked you to come and join us was because I got a phone call 2 Saturdays ago, Saturday evening, and lo and behold, I was connected to a young man in the Howard County Detention Center. And to your point about how the system impacts Blacks worse, it was brought to my attention that this young man had been sitting in pretrial since 2018. And what I'm going to is a issue called bail reform that was pushed heavily by the Democrats, including Attorney General Brian Frosh.
Mm-hmm.
And what I never appreciated about the bail reform, and you may have a different angle, but I saw the Black bail bondsmen go out of business. And I say that because they were heavy sponsors of our show for years. I saw where they were trying to just get their piece of the pie, but they had to go up against Fred Frank. And quite honestly, it was an uphill struggle. And they cautioned, this is the part I really want to get to. They cautioned us that bail reform would negatively impact Black people more than anybody. And so when this young man called me saying that he had been sitting in pretrial, and so with bail reform, where you used to get a bail bond, a cash bond, now you either get let go on your own recognizance or you sit. And so my question to you is, what have you gathered about the impact of bail reform? Am I right that Black people are sitting longer before going to trial?
So one, let's be clear that Black folks are always, right, even prior to, what we're defining as bail reform, always had harsher sentences and longer sentences. So prior to 2017, when the, bail reform pretrial rules took effect, you saw individuals that, yes, were, getting more cash bails. And to that point, you saw the same individuals who could not afford those cash bails. And so they had to sit. Okay. After 2017, we're still seeing the same thing, which is why my organization had to establish the Community Bail Fund for Baltimore City last year in 2020, because even in a pandemic, folks were still getting hit with a cash bail sitting for long periods of time. And to be clear, we knew this was going to happen because we had so much resistance from folks who did not want to change the way our pretrial system worked in effect. And so when it comes to the role of bail bondsmen, for the advocates, it doesn't matter whether you're Black or white. The role of the bail bondsman was not one that was actually helping community. Okay. I understand that folks are like, oh, these bail bondsmen were able to help them immediately get out of jail. Okay. I totally get that. But let's be clear. I remember those early morning nights where we're getting calls, and I'm talking about my own family, where we're getting calls and have to scramble together and pull money together so we can pay the bail bondsman to get family members out. We don't get that money back. We do not get that money back. And so this was a lucrative business. Yes. And I understand that Black folks were able to benefit from it, but you are benefiting from a business that's extracting money and bodies from our community. And so our position was, we need to reimagine this entire pretrial system that's been in existence for decades. And so what we've been able to create is, by example, showing that instead of using a bail bondsman where you pay them, and regardless of the outcome, right, it's not like you're getting that back. You invest in an organization like JOTF. So we run the Community Bail Fund, right? And there are other organizations that do this work too. Out for Justice, Baltimore Action Legal Team. So what happens is individuals that get a cash bail, okay? And the cash bail is ranging from like $100 all the way up to $50,000, okay? Or more. So we will post the bail, they're released. When we ensure that they show up for court, we then get those bail monies back, and then we reinvest them back into our fund so that we can use them for other people. The second step of our process is, not only are we just ensuring you showing up for court, but we also getting you on track so that you don't return back to the system. So what does that look like? That might be, you got to go back to school. You need some skills training. You need some help with some other stuff. That's the system we should be investing in. And if former Black bail bondsmen want to partner with us on that type of rebuilding that system, that makes sense. But what we cannot do is return back to a system where we're relying on individuals to just take money, post the money, and that's it. The second piece of this is, let's be clear, you never heard certain advocates say we need to abolish cash bail in 2017, because we weren't ready for that. We knew what was going to happen because we saw what happened in other states when they recognized, okay, we need to move away from the current system and start reforming. But you're going to have judges that are going to be like, look, I don't feel comfortable releasing them on their own recognizance, regardless of whatever they may be. I may see you as a public safety risk, and that may be some questions there too. Or I feel like you're not going to show up for court, so I'm not going to release you on your own recognizance. I'm going to hold you. And so we've seen, yes, while we've seen a decrease and those held on cash bail, we have seen an increase on those held without bond. And this is the case in almost every state that's advanced bail reform. And so what we are having to do is make judges feel comfortable with the fact that the law allows you a whole list of options that you can consider when you releasing somebody on pretrial. It doesn't just have to be the box. It doesn't just have to be cash bail. And it just doesn't have to, be released on your own recognizance. It also doesn't have to be, we just want to detain you until trial because we don't know what else to do. There are community-based efforts. You can make a requirement that they get enrolled in some program. You can make sure that they're, like other states have done, check in every week. All of these things that you can do that's not requiring somebody to pay hundreds of dollars for their release when they haven't been found guilty. That's what we mean about reimagining the system. And you're gonna get growing pains, but we can't say that, more Black people are being held without bond after bail reform, when it was like, look, more Black people were being held without bond and on cash bail prior to bail reform. And I see Mr. Gaines said a lot of people being released to home monitoring, which costs more. That's another thing we had to do with the bail fund. So at first, when we, started the bail fund in 2020, we were focused on cash bail. But because of the pandemic, judges were releasing individuals to home detention. Now I'm just going to focus on Baltimore City here. In Baltimore City, our corrections is run by the state. The state of Maryland runs all corrections in Baltimore City. That includes pretrial. So what they're doing is they're contracting with private home monitoring companies. And so when I am released to home detention by the courts, a condition of my home release is I have to pay these fees. And so the major home detention companies, and the biggest one is ASAP, that's located in Towson, it's about $250 for the setup fee to get connected. There's a daily rate that, could range from $7 to $10 a day. If there's a urinalysis, you might have to pay for that, random urinalysis. Then if you want to get it disconnected, it's about $175. And so if you can't pay that, you've then violated a condition of your release and then are sent back to jail.
Right.
So it's like the private monitoring companies have now found a way to make money off of poor people.
Is that
and
right?
It's like these are the things that we have to. So we had to step in and we started paying home monitoring fees for folks so they wouldn't go back to jail. I had to go before judges at Wabash and others and be like, can you please not send this individual to jail because they couldn't pay $700 in home monitoring fees? We will pay that. My organization will pay it.
Is this right?
No. That's what we're fighting against. The idea that we can just knock this out in 1 year and everything's going to be good for Black people. No. This is a fight that we are in.
Because it costs $1,000 for somebody to get on the box. They locked up. They lost their job. Where are they going to get the money from?
And look, this is not even only in pretrial. We also talking about the same thing in parole and probation, right? Think about when you release after some years. You don't have no job, but you get put on this box. And in some cases, you expected to pay that.
That's wrong.
So it's this idea that we expect.
You won't give them a job and you expect them to pay. I mean, just shoot them in the head.
Restitution too. Throw in restitution.
So
I get out after some years, I got to pay $17,000 in restitution. If I don't pay that after a certain period of time, there's a threat of reincarceration for me. But I can't get no job because I got.
So did you know that inmates can get a COVID relief check?
So I learned about that. I did. And I actually got some more information from the individual, Miss Nicole, on your call last week, I believe.
Well, I'm glad she shared that information. I found that she has been sharing information that some CPAs do not know.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other people. I know Paul Gardner is working with not particularly returning citizens, working with businesses. But I learned also out in Portland that people are getting COVID checks. Inmates are getting COVID checks. If they were locked up during COVID, there was a class action lawsuit. You get a check for almost anything in Portland, Oregon. They have a homeless situation with white people that will blow your mind.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
So I did not know about your campaign for On the Box and for bail. Please send us this information so that we can share it, and we will share it far and wide. I did not know, and anything else that we need to get out there. Also,
can I offer something? I want to offer something. I'll be sure to also share this with you all because I think you would be a great partner in this. When we started the bail fund last year, and we kicked off the bail fund in May 2020, the following month we did a Juneteenth Father's Day bailout, and the focus is that Father's Day weekend bailing out Black men. And so we're doing that again next month, and we're about to kick off, our big fundraising drive. And it's the weekend of Juneteenth and Father's Day. And the whole focus is we are raising money so that we can bail out Black men, and particularly fathers, so they can be home by Father's Day Sunday. And so I want to be sure to share that information with you, but we want to have a weekend of just like celebration and, let's get them home. That Juneteenth, we're supposed to, set the captives free, even though I ain't really work like that. At least this weekend, let's release some folks from incarceration, and let's celebrate our Black fathers that weekend as well.
What can we do? We have to bring you back on. Do we need to do a telethon? We can talk about that. We've never done.
Yeah, I would love to come back on.
But
closer to the event.
I saw Jerry Lewis raising money for years, and I don't know where any of that damn money went. Just like United Negro College Fund. Did you know that this is the first time a Black man has headed the United Negro College Fund? There are a lot of people who claim to serve. I've never met a United Negro College Fund scholarship recipient, but there are a lot of people who claim to serve our community, Caryn, and that's why it is so important to have you regularly on the show, because we support efforts like yours. We love what you do. And please tell us about you described as your best friend, Nicole Mundell.
Yes, my partner in justice and crime.
Who is she?
So Nicole is the executive director for Out for Justice. Out for Justice is a member-led organization. The members are comprised of formerly incarcerated individuals, their family members, friends, and supporters. I'm very grateful to have been with Out for Justice since its inception as a nonprofit, and I serve as board president. Out for Justice has been one of our strong partners in this, because you can't do this work without having the directly impacted at the table. I don't understand how people will lead on, these types of efforts and won't talk to not near one person that's been impacted, won't have them at the table, but just will exploit them to no end. And so everything that we do, we take to Out for Justice into the larger directly impacted community to say, like, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think? Okay. And they'll let us know and we go fight it together. And so, Nicole, in addition to being, one of my closest best friends, she is a strong advocate and leader in the space of, representing and uplifting and centering the voices of the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated, and particularly with the focus of formerly incarcerated women, as she is one as well.
Black women are the fastest growing demographic. I got to ask you this, and you saw that question. I got to tell you, I am the biggest fan of this man right here. He has always been a huge supporter of mine. I mean, 24/7. I don't know that I ever had to call him for me or any family member, but I've called him many times to help people. I've seen him help a lot of people. And honestly, this man didn't do it for the profit. Yeah, he got to make $1, but I saw him helping people who would not otherwise get help. That's what I know about him. But anyway, how do you pick the people you bail out?
So a number of ways, right? So the primary way is we, really focus on those individuals who, are represented by the Office of the Public Defender, right? They're too poor to afford an attorney. And so, they'll send us a list of individuals who are sitting there, on a cash bail. And these are individuals where, again, we had one guy, he was in there for I lie to you not, $500 cash bail. He had been sitting there for about 7 months, and the charges were rogue and vagabond. I lie to you not. Rogue and vagabond. And so, we'll get a list of individuals who...
Homeless.
Yes, correct. That's pretty much what that is, right? You know what it is. That's just what that is. And so, we'll get a list from, Office of Public Defender of individuals who, have a cash bail, focusing on individuals who, hopefully they don't have a detainer in some other jurisdiction that will make it difficult for us to post their bail as central bookends. We'd like to prioritize individuals, younger individuals in particular, try to, get them out, help them get situated. Women, of course. At first we're looking at, those who are in with high bails for nonviolent offenses. Then we'll take it to the next level. We'll have individuals who will reach out to us, in different spaces to say, hey, we have someone who was, locked up. Here are their details. If we have the money available, and if it seems like we can, work with the individual and stay connected with them and all of that, we'll move forward with it. But I mean, it's one where we just kicked it off, and it's one where it's just growing. So, so we're always looking for partners in this.
Well, we want to be a partner. I want to help do some type of telethon on a regular basis, but let's start with one focused on the 19th.
Father's Day, Juneteenth. Yeah.
Also, it would be wonderful if we could find other media sponsors to do the same. Maybe WEAA. I do a segment out there Thursday nights at midnight. Maybe we can get some help from WEAA. Maybe we can get some help from the Afro. You have mentioned Black Media. There's the Baltimore Times. There are other independent Black news outlets, because I can't thank you enough for saying support Black media. Nobody's going to talk about our issues, and
not like this. Not like this.
We talk about, you know, we tick some people off when we're not saying what they want us to say. If I was saying all of the lovey-dovey stuff, there would be no problem. But this ain't that kind of show. We bust caps here.
Yeah. And I mean, Donnie, I'll even say this. I appreciate the fact, and quite honestly, this would be the only medium where I would even be interested or willing to have the type of conversation about the impact of our advocacy efforts on Black business. Because I think that is something that many times we have to make sure that we're making a space to have those types of conversations, because for the Black advocates, in no way, shape, or form do we ever want to, you know, ensure that we're working against our own community. But there also has to be an understanding about how sometimes there are certain structures that are harmful to our communities. And how can we make sure that we're always moving together? There are things we may not know, there are things they may not know. But Black media, this is the space we should be able to have those conversations and educate each other and collaborate and do all the things together.
You've schooled me, and I can take it from you because you do it with a smile, and you know that I'm only trying to get to the essence of it. So you really don't take it the wrong way. Poor people of big business. Yeah, microwave.
They sure are. It's the criminalization of poverty.
Do you verify?
It is the criminalization of poverty. Verify with mothers that the men are trying to support their families. Come on, Larry.
Larry need a private conversation. Do you know Larry's number?
I don't. We can talk offline.
Jay-Z put up money before Jamal.
They did it after folks were already doing little organic type things, and we're happy we added their voice to it and the like, really elevated it. But I'm gonna tell you right now, this is why it's important for Black media to have this conversation. There is still a narrative about the criminality of Black bodies. And even when we're talking about something like let's think about it. In pretrial, you have not been found guilty yet. You have not been sentenced or convicted of a crime. Okay. But this idea that they are dangerous. They are a public safety risk because of something that they may have did 10 years ago. And so we got to just reframe how we talk about our communities, because right now it's like, oh, they just need to be locked up until we figure it out.
Yeah, as you were talking, they sitting for 3 years, haven't even been charged. I lost my train of thought, but
that's the crux. That's what makes it so egregious. You are literally sitting in jail, the worst place, right? And you have not been found guilty. Like I'm incarcerated because
What happens during that 3 years? What happens? What does the state try to do in that 3 years?
So, during those 3 years, you're going to see a lot of postponements. Because at the end of the day, they trying to get you to plea.
Right.
They trying to get you to plea.
That's what
and many times what we are trying to do is we looking at the whole spectrum. So we can just, we don't want you to hold out. We trying to get you out because we also know when you're out, you're going to be more likely to have a favorable outcome at your court case. You can prepare and all of that. But they trying to get you to plea. And if you plea, you thinking, all right, let me just, plea. And they say they're going to drop the rest of the charges, right? Now we talking about the unit rule that we were finally able to, repeal, right? You got all these charges. They tell you to plead guilty to this. We're going to drop all the rest of the charges. So you're like, all right, bet. I'm going to do that so I can come home. Now it's time for you to get a job. They done told you they didn't drop the charges. You're going to be good. Now you got a guilty conviction. You ain't do it, but you just said, yeah, I did it because I'm trying to come home.
Because
that is the situation that we forcing people into.
Yes, that's what the young man made clear to me from Howard County, because I'm asking his boy, why is he sitting for 3 years? And that's when they brought in, they coming to him weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. Hey, you want to take this plea? You want to take this plea? And so that we're not speaking foreign to the average Joe, what does taking the plea mean? Can you explain that for the lay person?
Sure. Sure. And even before I do that, we do have to acknowledge that, yes, in the past year, there was COVID, so courts was closed and all of that. So, yeah, folks were, sitting a little longer and having to go through that, which was why it was important for us to start this fund to get folks out. But when we say cop a plea, when we say, encouraging folks to take a plea, they're literally just that. What that means is plead guilty. So even if, just imagine, you feel strongly about the fact that you did not commit the crime. It was not you, okay? But you are being encouraged to take this plea so you can get home, okay? That's all you want. You want to go home. You want your freedom. So you're going to plead guilty because you are just focused on how can I get home, not realizing, because they're not going to tell you the impacts of that guilty conviction later on.
So I wanted to ask you, there is, I remember when Nick Mosby was a delegate, he pushed this bill, ban the box.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to ask you about his political career, but I remember he pushed that bill. And I also remember, because I see a lot of people kissing up to this man, Don Fry of the Greater Baltimore Committee said he was not for ban the box. And this was a former Democratic delegate. And so that is a reminder to me that even though we're in a 9-1 Democratic town and a 2-1 Democratic state, not every Democrat believes like I do.
Listen, let me tell you something. And, no one really likes to hear it. But when you've been doing it this long and, it's not just about Democrat and Republican anymore, because many times we, the advocates, have to spend the most energy, the most time educating and urging support for our issues, not with Republicans, but with Democrats.
Our own people.
And so yes, we absolutely have some champions that will stand strong and stand tall. But, this idea that, oh, yeah, you're absolutely going to be able to get the Black Caucus support on that. It's like, no, we still got to educate them. We still got to bring them along. We still got to, make sure they feel comfortable. Democratic caucus as a whole, like you're still going to have a lot of moderate Democrats that, still want to hold on to, certain systems that are disruptive and devastating to communities, particularly Black communities. And with ban the box. Go ahead.
Does that make sense? I mean, we vote for these people. They wouldn't get there if it weren't for us, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So, I mean, you say that we have to learn to make this an issue, excuse me, with anybody running for governor or any other office, attorney general. And just because somebody attorney general don't mean we can't pull them to the carpet and ask them these tough questions. I get so tired of, no disrespect, but white liberals thinking they know Black people. I get so sick of, oh, I'm your friend. You're not my friend. Back up. Mainstream media, the Baltimore Sun, these people have never been our friends. Fox will use us to make their points. They'll use Black people anytime to make their points, but they don't care about the Black community.
I think that a lot of that has to do with many times our white allies don't really understand or appreciate what it means to be an ally. And so there's this rush to be seen as a progressive, a liberal progressive. And I don't even like that term anymore. I feel like the word progressive, it's been bastardized. It's been exploited. You got folks out here calling themselves progressives and they are supporting like issues where it's like, hold up, this makes no sense. And so it's if you're going to be an ally, don't be in a space and act like you know more than the folks who are actually going through what we're supposed to be advocating for or against together. That's one of the most frustrating things. And I can't remember who said it, but somebody said, the white liberal progressive is actually the biggest impediment to transformational change in our communities.
At least with the Republican Trumpster, you know where they stand. You know exactly where they stand. They all about jobs in Hagerstown, locking up Black people. But it's that progression. I don't even know what the hell a progressive is. I'm a Black man in America. They play with these words, just like Democrat and Republican.
Semantics.
Semantics.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have
So
five
now it's
minutes.
about just like, what do you support? What policies are you trying to put in place? Because the talking out of both sides, it's like, I don't go by these terms anymore. I'm going by what you do. I'm going
So,
by, yeah.
so thank you for taking time out. I know we only have 5 more minutes. While we have this, can you again school us when a politician, because we have an election coming up June of next year, June 2022, we are focused on it already. We know all of these people going to come into our community saying, vote for me, vote for me. Ex-offenders, it's our number, it's one of our top 5 issues, always. And shout out on that note to brother Bay, because he schooled me on this when I was
Brother Bay.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Brother Bay. He was a mentor to many of us, like in the early days, 2011, when this wasn't even hot stuff yet. It was the Brother Bays, okay? The Brother Earl Amines, like all of those. Brother Anise, right?
You
like
remember
all
Anise?
Of those folks. Yes.
Did you know Antar?
Absolutely. It was those folks who brought me up. Who made sure that I knew how to go about things and what to watch for, and make sure that I wasn't, if I'm in these, because they recognize you have an ability and the privilege to be in spaces that we're not going to be in.
Because so when you in those, somebody, they would hurt somebody. They don't have the patience. Hey, exactly. They would wait for you outside that meeting, bust you right upside your head.
Exactly. So they like, when you in these spaces and you represent us, we trust you. Okay. So this is what you need to know. This is what you need to be aware of.
And you've been schooled. If you mention those names, you've
Brother Walter Lomax, all of them. Like those were my mentors. That was my foundation.
So what do we need to tell citizens when Joe Blow comes to say, I want your vote? What do we as citizens need to say back to the politicians, or what questions do we need to ask?
So one, I think that, we need to not be fearful of asking those questions that are specific to our experiences and situations. I think a lot of times, when we go before politicians, many times we may want to just speak to what like the larger talking points are. But what I'm finding in many of these elections, you'll get folks up there and they'll say, for a long time, many folks who were running for a statewide office in Maryland, they were bragging about the fact that, our criminal justice success was repeal of the death penalty. And, we over here like, that's it. I mean, that's great, but like, that's it. That's the only thing. That there is so much that needs to be done to elevate this community up to where we claim we want to see them, this community of formerly incarcerated. So we need to start being real specific with what we need. Not broadly speaking, but real specific. I mean, even down to the point where it's like, I should not have to go to jail for driving on a suspended license because I couldn't pay child support. That does not make any sense.
Especially when Fox caught freak nasty Theru Vignaraja driving without on a suspended license over there on Green Mountain Avenue picking up prostitutes.
Policies like that, that's having a certain impact on certain communities and not others.
And he walking around like he ain't do nothing. You nasty.
Listen, last session we had a bill we were trying to pass a law to say you cannot lock somebody up for driving on a suspended license because they couldn't pay child support, or lock somebody up because they driving uninsured. Because think about it, this is the other thing. Okay. Car insurance companies can use these things called non-driving factors to set insurance premium rates. By law, if you're in Maryland, if you're going to be driving, you got to have car insurance. So they're using things like credit, education, income, and zip code. We run a pre-apprenticeship construction training program. We got folks who, once they graduate, we get them a job in construction. They're ready to rock and roll. It's time to get them insurance. Some of these estimates are like $600 a month, liability only. They can't afford that. So you know what they're going to do? Because I would do it too. I'm driving without insurance because I got stuff to do. I got to get to work. I got to take care of my kids. Now I'm getting picked up because I'm driving without car insurance. I can get locked up for that. That's the criminalization of poverty and race. What are we doing?
Yeah, but
those are the type of things that our policy makes, because many of these Democrats, they actually are getting campaign contributions from like the insurance companies and like all of these folks. And so if we're not getting real granular and detail oriented with what's impacting folks on like daily stuff, then we're going to keep saying the fluffy, what we say.
You gave me what I asked for. It's 10:45. How can people reach you?
So folks can reach me. You can, my email, caryn@jotf.org. You can also go to our website, www.jotf.org. I thank you, Donnie, for allowing me to come on and even providing this space and for doing all that you do. I look forward to coming back and, generating some support for our Juneteenth Father's Day bailout and everything else that I hope we can do together.
We love the work. We love the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
We'll be back tonight at 7 o'clock, folks. BlackUSA.News. Thank you all for joining us. And have a great day.